In this episode of We Do A Little, we are joined by Emmett, one of the members of the On the Roof's urban exploring team. They're known for having the largest urban exploring YouTube channel. We go deep on Emmett's intro to NFTs, life before NFTs, the history of urban exploring, and all of the nuances that go into being a safe and successful urban explorer. As always, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Andy, Dees, and guests may own NFTs discussed.
This is Andy.
Yeah, I'm Dees.
Today, we are here with Emmett from On the Roofs. He is a urban explorer, longtime urban explorer, and somebody who's been in the NFT space now for,
A little over a year.
18 months, feels like.
Yeah, almost 18. A little bit over a year.
And yeah, I mean, to me, On the Roofs is like the biggest urban exploring YouTube channel. It was my first introduction to urban exploring. So it's really cool to have you on here to pick your brain about all things, not only urban exploring and NFTs, but just everything. So yeah, I guess we'd like to start out with a really basic question to break the ice. And it is, how did you get involved with NFTs?
So a little over a year ago, you know, my good friend Drift, that you also know, was in jail. So we were talking on the phone every day during that period. And I just wanted a way to help him, you know, like I wanted to figure, because his situation, which you're all aware of now, was very fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
You curse in the podcast?
Oh yeah, we curse. We do a little cursing.
All right. So I started planning a gallery show with Super Chief Gallery, exploring related. It was going to be me, and I was going to pick like maybe 2 or 3 other explorers, and we were going to do a gallery show, and then donate all the proceeds to Drift's legal case. So he ended up getting out, and we sat down and we had a meeting, like, how is the show going to be? And Ed from Super Chief was the first person that ever mentioned. I never heard anyone mention NFTs before him. He said, well, actually, we should not sell prints. We should sell these digital NFT images. And, you know, he had to explain it to me a couple of times first. And I was almost insisting, like, no, we should have both. We should have prints and NFTs. But he was saying, no, trust me, NFTs is a big thing. And you know, Drift was in this meeting and he was kind of shaking his head like, interesting. And then basically between that meeting and when the gallery show actually happened a month or 2 later,
Mm-hmm.
he blew up, you know.
Yeah, Where My Vans Go came out, the New York Times article that, you know, the New York Times article was my introduction to him as a person, his story.
That was before we ever minted anything. But yeah, that was the big thing that got public, you know, opinion.
How did you meet the Super Chief team?
So I've always been an artist. I went to Parsons Art School, and at first I studied architecture, but then I switched to be an art major.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had gallery shows as a visual artist, like both here in New York with Super Chief and also in Europe. So I always wanted to be a Super Chief artist because I like their vibe of the gallery, and you know, I want to be an artist. But when I would meet with Ed, he would focus more on my photography, say, this is the stuff we really got to show. And you know, at that time, I never saw myself as a photographer.
How long ago was this, if you don't mind me asking?
A little over a year ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was like middle.
All around the same time then. And
yeah, like around 18 months ago. So, you know, so much credit for him because he's the one that introduced me to this and pushed for it and told us it would be a good idea. And then, yeah, eventually we had the gallery show, and it went well. Like I actually sold NFTs, and I sold my all-time, like my own personal work, my all-time high, 3.33. I sold that first opening night. Nice. And, you know, my world changed because for years I've been this struggling artist working on my paintings and not really making a dent, like definitely not being able to support myself in any type of way, just being the starving artist that does it because you need to do it. But, you know, I always had my day job. I'm a contractor, so I always worked, and I never had, slowly the dream that you can support yourself through your art starts fading as, life grinds you down. But yeah, NFTs just came like this rejuvenating wind out of nowhere. And I got swept up in it. And I made NFTs and I sold NFTs. And all of a sudden, it's just like this new door opened that wasn't there before.
Going back to the contracting part, I'm curious, like what were you doing as a contractor?
So if I'm going to start from the beginning, like my origin story, I moved from Sweden here to New York, like almost 20 years ago at this point.
Okay, so you would have been late teens?
Yeah, exactly. So I moved and then I started college here. And I got swept up in a lot of bad habits. I had a lot of addictions. Because in Sweden, it's a very draconian place when it comes to drugs. Like everyone binge drinks, but that's it. Like marijuana is considered a narcotic.
I was just there. And, I would never incriminate myself because I would never break any laws. But, they're very strict on from what I saw.
In Sweden, it's actually considered a narcotic, like to have. And if you have like one weed plant, you can get convicted for like serious narcotic like operation. And it's very, very strict there. So I always view drugs as something dangerous and bad growing up. And then I got over here and I saw how liberal people are at art college.
You got to New York and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I liked it. I got swept up in it.
Yeah.
I started doing everything and anything. And long story short, I got to a really bad place in my life where I was in rehab, and I basically did not know how to survive, how to have a future. Like every night I would think about this so much, anxiety, like how am I going to be an actual adult person in society and make a living for myself and not, like at that time I was criminal, I would deal drugs and I would do whatever I could to get money,
You had to do what you had to do.
Yeah. So one thing that I started doing was TaskRabbit. Like I heard about this app, TaskRabbit, where you get paid to do random chores left and right. And I've always been pretty handy. So I signed up for the app, and then, I headed out with some tools. Like the first day I worked for TaskRabbit was like a tote bag with like a hammer and a screwdriver and a wrench. Yeah. And you show up somewhere and you try to like assemble some IKEA furniture. But over time, I really took it on and learned. Like I started doing more serious advanced stuff, and I started doing a lot of just installing like wall mounting TVs and sound systems, and even doing like some plumbing and electrical, just hustling, just literally Googling on YouTube,
like YouTube University,
like how do I change a pipe. And then you come in and you get like $100 an hour for plumbing, and it's absurd that they even allow that.
It's crazy. I mean, there's so many people, I feel like, this day and age who don't even have the drive to go to YouTube University. And it's like, I think about this all the time, where we have all this information at our fingertips and you can learn anything you want. And like sometimes people forget that.
And there's almost like a learned helplessness with some people where they can't even assemble IKEA furniture, even though I think anyone could.
Yeah, but shout out to Mrs. D's. Like, we wouldn't have built IKEA furniture in our house if it wasn't for Mrs. D's. I sit there for 30 minutes and I'm using the dumb Allen wrenches. I'm getting pissed off. I want to break things. I'm like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, I feel that.
But something that happened like with that job was that I would go to a lot of fancy buildings. And every day I might be in 5 different buildings running around. And at the end of the day, I always wanted to smoke a joint. Like, that's my thing. Like, when I'm done with everything, sometimes it's like the little one-hitter bat, and sometimes it's an actual joint. And back then, it was still like you could get arrested if you smoked on the street. You had to be more careful.
Way different than it is today.
Yeah. So I started, after finishing my last job for the day, going up to the roofs of these buildings. Like, I remember being in very nice, fancy buildings I would love to get back into today. And I didn't know anything about urban exploring or a scene or anything like that. Like, I just wanted a chill place.
Just wanted to smoke weed, where it was quiet.
Yeah, so I go to the rooftops and I look at the view, and I would stay there sometimes an extra hour after the job was done. So that's like how I started with really enjoying rooftops and then having this like deep connection with it that felt very important to me. Because once you leave that job, if you get straight on the subway and you're around people, you go straight home. Like there's no break, there's no moment where you have your alone time. But on the roof, that's what I found. I found this peace where I could be alone with my thoughts, which is rare in New York.
No, I feel that. I feel like even when I'm on the balcony of the hotel, it's loud and I hear noise, and it's like I'm alone and I'm up high, but it's still like I'm not alone because I'm in New York City.
Yeah, plus at that time I lived in like a shitty basement apartment, so my home had like no views. If you try to open the window, then everyone from the street just sees you. So
you're like,
you
fuck
keep
that.
it closed.
Keep the blackout curtain.
Yeah.
So how did the On the Roofs team come together? I know I've talked a lot with Raskolov. How did you meet him, and how did that become something bigger than just yourself?
So that was my first exposure to like actual high level urban exploration. I was visiting roofs personally, just doing my own thing, not even thinking that this is something people do really.
Yeah. And
then just probably by chance, I came across On the Roof's YouTube video, one of the first videos they did, like Shanghai Tower. Probably.
Yeah, that's the one. It's like, I remember that was on Reddit. It blew up. It has like 100 million views.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you're above the clouds. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So you saw that and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, I was instantly thrilled. Something in me told me that I could do this and that I wanted to try. And I hadn't really seen it. Like he was, over in Asia doing it. He's from Ukraine, obviously. And, I looked around and I said, no one's doing this here. Like, and there are some tall construction cranes. Like I could see them, I know where they were. So I just walked over to them. Like in the beginning, it would be in the afternoon.
It's like I walked over.
Yeah, and it was so stupid in the beginning, just complete learning by trial and error. I go in the afternoon, I climb inside a site. I discover there's workers everywhere around me. I try to hide. I try to climb up on like a greasy elevator shaft, and I ruin my outfit and my shoes. and it was just complete like learning through trial and error in the beginning. But then eventually I did get up on a very tall crane and I climbed it to the top. And it was just something I hadn't seen done in America before. Like I had at that point started using Instagram and I discovered that there were more explorers, but I felt like...
Was this like 2014, 2015?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I'm not great with dates.
No, I always try like... I feel like as humans, we just compress everything. We're like, yeah, it like happened last year. And you're like, wait, no shit, that was like 8 years ago. So it's like just trying to paint that visual for people.
Yeah, so, I was starting small and I was, doing new things that I didn't see around me, largely inspired by On the Roofs. So very early on wrote to Raskolov, letting him know that I'm a big fan.
How'd that go? You're like, hey, I'm a big fan. I just saw a big crane in New York and like, I just climbed it. What do you think?
Well, like, pretty much. Like
something like that.
I showed him the crane that I climbed and he actually said like, oh man, this one is actually nice. Like, and he asked, is that up right now? Can I come and climb it with you?
That's awesome.
And they had some visa problems getting into America and they couldn't come right away. And by the time he asked again, the crane was removed. It was down. But he did end up coming to New York maybe a year after that. And we met up and we just did some regular small roofs in like Long Island City. This was about 6 years ago.
Nice.
And, it was just someone that inspired me, like someone who I felt was a pioneer of what he's doing. So I wanted to meet him and we met them and we clicked and then we discovered that we could do, good work together. And we ended up, not that time, but the next time he came back to New York, a year after our first meeting, we climbed the crane together and then we did more big, serious buildings then. And eventually he offered me to be part of On the Roofs, because it was always Raskolov and Vadim, the two of them. And Raskolov is the founder. And Vadim, he has a different life now. He got a family, he got
it's different.
Children. He settled down, and he doesn't explore the same way anymore. So Raskolov needed a new partner, and I was happy to to fill those shoes.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't actually know that. Like, we've talked a bit. I didn't know that was the origin story. It was kind of like, I saw him doing it. I was inspired. So I did it. And then I showed him and he was like, oh, that's legit. And then next thing you know, we're working together.
So was all of the learning kind of as you were doing this just kind of like trial by fire, or were there like, is there a forum you can go to read about how to do this better? Or?
I think there are like forums for abandoned exploring, like abandoned buildings, you know, bandos as they call them. I think on Reddit there's a big community for that. But crane climbing and really tall buildings, no, there wasn't really. I never found a message forum or anything like that. The closest thing to a community was the Instagram, you know, the people that actually explored and posted on Instagram. And that's how I got to know most of the community. But yeah, learning through trial and error, 100%. Like the first time I climbed up a crane, I did not feel sure that I could climb back down again. Like I didn't know. And
did you turn around?
No. I just kept going. And I climbed it in this weird way on the top, like a more like I know there's easiest way to do it now. And yeah, I was just in a point in my life where I needed to like really feel some pulse, and you know, you can call it self-destructive behavior, dangerous, high-risk behavior, but I felt compelled to do dangerous things because I had so much inner turmoil, and I really didn't care at that time, like if I lived or die. You know, I was not thinking that I was going to have this long, comfortable future. So it's like it seemed fine at the time to burn the candle at each end. You know, I was in treatment, like in a methadone treatment program, you know, having to go there every morning to take my dose, and still being sick as a dog every evening, and really just being in a really hard place in life. But I never believed in like suicide. I never believed that it would actually like work. You know, I believe that the spirit lives on after you leave your body. So I was like, well, I can't do it that way, but
not solving
if I live to the fullest and I'm just out there, you know, then it didn't matter so much at the time. And I was willing to do dangerous things and find out how it would work or not. You know, that's probably the wrong intention for exploring. Like, you shouldn't have a death wish. Not that I did, but I was just more... It was less important at the time. But now, over time exploring, I feel like it's gained me this new appreciation for life where now I'm more careful than I was in the beginning. Now I do take it much more carefully and safety, and I take precautions. And you know, it's through exploring I almost found the beauty of life, you know. And I used to see it as a reality escape, that I did this wild thing to just kind of escape my mind or my environment. But over time, it became more like a reality immersion, where doing this allows me to fully like feel okay and appreciate society and appreciate living in a big city. And then, you know, things that walking on the street level, sometimes you can get a different sense of it. You know, it's very easy to feel like you have no power in a big city like this. There's not much freedom to roam or be by yourself, you know?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess, like, thinking about that more, do you have a particular, like, when you think about this, like a particular memory or image in your head of like a time where you were just looking over something that you had climbed and you were just like, holy shit, like, and it was very, like, I guess, kind of foundational in you getting to this place? Or has it just kind of been a culmination of all these different times?
Well, I think I have like a photographic memory. Like, I'm able to recall things very precisely and vividly, and I'm able to sometimes look in a memory as if it's a photo and then like zoom in on parts and see them.
That's so interesting.
So sometimes when I'm up on roofs, you just try to remind yourself to actually look through your eyes. You know, it's so easy to get caught up in, oh, I'm doing this thing and I'm going to get some photos or some video, or I'm going to climb there. But I always try to take a moment to take a step back. It's almost like a similar notion to meditating, where you just try to let go and absorb everything. And in those moments, looking out at the city, it does feel unreal, because I come from a very small, like I was born out in the woods with no neighbor nearby. Like the closest neighbor would have been a farmer like 45 minutes away. If you look at Google Maps, you would just see pine trees. Like I was born in the middle of nowhere. So it's such a dramatic contrast, to things I ever thought I would see in my lifetime, to sometimes, like Central Park Tower, for example, being on the tallest roof in America, like the number one tallest roof in America, looking down at all of New York. It's very hard to put it into words, but it feeds my soul in this way where, like, I really need that to feel okay. If I don't explore for a long period of time, I think it affects my mental health badly. Like I need to be creating and getting out of my comfort zone, especially.
Yeah.
I feel like getting out of your comfort zone, like what is your, I feel like, do you have a comfort zone? Like, I mean, the Mexico City climb where you're just chilling on the watch deck and then you're like, yeah, we're going up. And then like the people around you are like, yeah, you can do that? like where does your comfort zone end?
Well, if you asked me the same question when I started, I would have given you some cocky answer like, no, I'm fearless, I'm ice cold, But that's not the truth. Like I think a lot of people try to convince themselves of that. And a lot of, for me, it's more of a process of overcoming the fear. I sense the fear. It's there. I have a lot of anxiety in general. That's part of why I had these problems with drugs, because you self-medicate to feel okay. So even just leaving the house on a regular day, I have anxiety and I need to double check that, the faucets are turned off and the lights are turned off and the cats are fed. And I always end up running late to things. And I have a social anxiety in general. So even just leaving the house, knowing I'm going to go to this big office building and lie to the lobby staff and potentially get in trouble or arrested or get yelled at or just get rejected and humiliated. Like, no, I don't take that easy. Like, I definitely feel dread and anxiety around what I do, especially before doing it, leading up to it. But if it's one thing I learned is that like you'll never grow in your comfort zone. If I just stay home and say, it's too much, I can't go outside, I can't meet people, I can't, there's so many reasons why I shouldn't do what I'm trying to do. It's illegal, you can get hurt. But you're never going to grow in your comfort zone. Like you need to step outside of it, and through like testing yourself and determined actions, you slowly raise the bar of what you can do. And at the end of the day, like I just feel very good after I accomplish it. Like there's no better feeling for me than after I'm done and I'm on the way down. And I know I get to go home and just like look at the photos and sit and edit them and smoke some weed on the couch. And I enjoy a regular chill night like so much after doing this, but it's like I need the balance to appreciate one and the other. If I just do one thing all the time, then I need that balance between the extreme relaxation and these challenges. But it's a daily process of overcoming the fear.
So you're able to like compartmentalize the fear once you're up there climbing. It's like,
yeah, and most of my fears are not related to like falling or climbing. They're more related to getting caught or arrested or just failing. Like even if you don't get caught, if there's been times where I spent 5 hours inside of a building trying to find a way up, and then I leave at midnight empty-handed, and you never even made it onto the roof. And in those moments, you feel such existential despair. So I'm really, I guess, scared of. The conclusion I've come to is that I'm more scared of suffering than I am scared of death,
Gotcha. I trying to put myself in that position where like I think I would freeze. Like even, you know, before the pod started, you're like, let's go up on the roof. I'm like, whoa, like
Yeah, you have roof access back there.
I'm like,
so this is the old alarm that probably doesn't work anymore with the sensor on the door.
clearly people have the same idea.
Yeah, someone
They just came up with smoke.
the crane on it. 30 Hudson Yard there, the triangle point with the observation link up on that rooftop. The very
Is there a crane on there right now?
It's a wind H&M Spire and the Bank of America Spire. Those are definitely up there. But I just love crane climbs the most, I think, in general. I just have the best vibe on the crane. It's very different, like the smells and everything there. It's kind of, it has a lot of metal beams on it. It's kind of like on the left, the lower of the three.
Yeah, almost like a diagonal.
Yeah. I posted a photo from the top of that spire this morning. I love that one.
Think you like, I've been that one.
Yeah, 1540 Broadway is that.
You're like, yeah, that crane over there, just up there.
Yeah, Adobe.
Tell someone, and then it becomes a thing. Like, hey,
Yeah.
Now we know this.
And so many people are unoriginal. You know, once they see something done, they're gonna try to go do it, but they're never gonna like break new grounds themselves. Which is like the fun part about traveling, because you go to such a brand new place and you really have to like break new grounds. So this would be on top of the elevators, like the machine that drives the elevators. Yeah, so if it's ever raining and you want to smoke, you can just do it in there.
Sitting here, I'm the type where I want to be like laying on the floor, touching earth. Like, I think a lot of it too comes with like my own anxiety about my physical health. Like, I feel like I'm not in good enough shape where if shit goes wrong, like I can physically pull myself up and get it together. Like, I don't know. I thought about it a bit over the last like couple hours since Weish brought up, you know, bonus content of climbing, and I'm just like having existential dread just thinking about like being on a roof.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. Like I think that's why I connect with the work so much, because it makes me feel something so not dreadful, but like there's like a lump in my throat when I look at the work. Like,
yeah, the word I like for that is visceral.
Yeah.
You know, because the visuals give you a sensation and impact where like it could be like the hairs on your neck stand up. And,
Yeah,
and that's
varies,
always
like,
the aim of any good art or photography, right? To give you a feeling that's beyond just the concept or the geometry. You know, you want to convey a sensation in art. So anytime people tell me they get a sensation that makes me very happy, you know, then I do my job.
No, you're doing a great job at that.
But I think it's very important also to take a stand against this type of like macho culture that we're going to be daredevils and outdo each other. It's not like that. And anytime I climb with people, especially new people, I tell them like there's nothing to prove here. Like, you have my respect, and our number one mission is to enjoy this and to appreciate the beauty of this. Like, it's not for you to have to impress me or show me anything or do it. Like, just do whatever you're comfortable with, and there's nothing to prove. And I've said that many times to new people I climb with on cranes, and some of them have said, oh, you know, I'm so relieved to hear that, because actually I'm going to hang back and just shoot you from over here. And I said, that's totally fine, because the last thing I want is to be involved in some type of accident. You know, that would just be the worst thing. So I never try to push people too hard. You know, you can just read people. They're gonna do what they're ready to do, and I would never tell someone, no, you need to go stand on that edge over there, you know, to do this properly,
To impress me.
Yeah, so there's no need to be nervous going up on the roof here, because
Yeah, no.
He's not going to make you jump off it.
we're just gonna chill like wherever we feel comfortable, and that is the number one
I think that's
goal.
really important. Like, I think a lot of very impressionable people might look at the art and like get that daredevil mentality where they're like, oh, I gotta like one up this, and that's how you put yourself in that position where accidents can happen
and
more
I'm
frequently.
scared of that, of being a bad influence to some young kid. I get it all the time, messages like, hey, can I climb with you? Or how did you do this? How can I go there? And I'm very strict about not giving them any hints. It's just, no, like, take it easy, like, just do whatever you're comfortable with and figure it out for yourself. Because at the end of the day, like, we're exploring buildings. Sure, we're exploring the outside world, but really it's like a process of self-discovery also. You just what your voice is as an artist, and then how you act under pressure. And the best way to find that out is just to go do something by yourself and not rely on anyone.
Yeah, that's sometimes hard for people to do. I have a question about your. I've probably asked this on Space, but I feel like it's good to get it recorded on a podcast. What's been your scariest climb, or like your scariest encounter that you've had? Let's say not with the legal police side, but just like maybe climate, or just like actual climbing scare, rather than like the police. We went deep a little bit about the Mexico situation and having to talk to police, and the next thing you know, you're taking pictures with them.
Mexican police is nice. The NYPD is not as nice always. Especially the counterterrorism unit is not so nice.
It's crazy.
I have questions about that, but first of all, you can answer Deez's question.
Yeah, I'm always more curious on that.
I mean, there has been climbs that I didn't do. Like, there has been things where I get up somewhere and I feel like, no, that's too much right now. And it can vary from day to day. Like, on one day I might be able to do it, but on another day I might feel a little tired, a little achy, whatever it is. Like, some days you just don't feel right. You didn't sleep so good. So it's on a spectrum, like, what I can do as far as climbing. But what stands out to me as an answer to that question is that I dislocated my shoulder 7 different times over 2 years of climbing, like right when I started.
How did that keep happening?
So in the beginning, it was just a thing where I was going to jump down from very tall. I was on a scaffolding, and they can be pretty high. So I was going to jump down to the street, and I didn't want to take all the impact on my knees because my knee was a little sore at the time. So I figured, let me just hang off of this edge and kind of like lower myself down and then jump. But how I grabbed was not mechanically sound. My shoulder ended up twisting in this way where it popped out of the socket.
It's like you land on the ground and it's like popped out.
Yeah, so I had to take it and kind of readjust it, like pop it back into the socket myself there. And then it kept happening. Like, remember after that, I couldn't taking a t-shirt on and off was so hard for about 2-3 weeks afterwards.
Oh,
like, I knew something was wrong. It wasn't just a regular sprain or something. And then it kept happening over the years. Towards the end, it would happen just when I would do very normal things, like a regular type of pull-up. I would just feel my shoulder pop. And it's happening inside construction sites, like on the 40th floor, like I can't call an ambulance and be like, come in here and reset my shoulder. Like, I have to physically do it myself and climb back out before anyone can help me, if I don't want to be arrested. So that led up to me going to the doctor and him telling me my shoulder was completely torn, like the ligament is off, like a complete tear. So I had to have shoulder surgery, and I couldn't raise my right arm for 6 months after that. Like, I had to become all left-handed, like everything, and as an artist, it was hard. I'm trying to draw left-handed. I'm trying to write in my diary left-handed.
Do you still use your left hand for anything after this, or did you kind of just go back to the right after the surgery?
Now I'm ambidextrous. I feel like I can use both, like, interchangeably. But this was a very hard period because I was injured, and I didn't know if I could climb again, because the way I climb, there's no safety, there's no ropes. If I fall, that's it. So if I have a shoulder I can't depend on, I took a big step back, and all of a sudden everything scared me then. Even just climbing a regular ladder, it's like, well, it's pretty hard to do it one-handed. Like, it's not as easy as it seems. And then, so there's periods where a lot of things scare me, but then there's other periods where I feel stronger and more confident, and I would rehabilitate myself. And and then I can do almost anything on some days, so it's always a spectrum, but I've been tested a lot, I feel, to get to this point and still be doing this.
Definitely. I'll let you ask, Andy. I know you. I keep cutting you off.
No, that was really interesting. I had like, not quite at that level, but I had like a pretty bad shoulder injury, with like the ligaments and stuff from playing football in high school, and I had like a pretty similar experience where I'd be like playing basketball with him, and I would like reach up to get the ball, and my shoulder would just like pop out, and I'd be like, "Oh fuck, I gotta give me a second." And it was like, so I can't even imagine trying to do like real, actually physical, challenging things with
picking yourself up.
Yeah.
No, I didn't trust my body during this period. It's the worst feeling when your body's breaking down and not working properly, and it takes so much determination to get back to a point where you feel like you can perform at 100% again.
Yeah.
So
you feel 100% now?
Close to. I'm definitely above 90% on the right shoulder. There's still some aches and some stuff, but overall, like, I can't put my hand behind my back. And that's one thing, actually, you were starting to mention law enforcement. So that's one thing that happened after that surgery. I had done the Bloomberg Tower here.
Okay.
And no one has ever done this before. I'm the first and only person to be up there. And there's some cameras on the spire that I thought was like Earth cams, how they show the view of New York. But actually, it turns out that some news stations had like remote control of these cameras. So they turned them around on me and started recording me.
Oh, shit. Can you imagine being that dude in the room who's like controlling all the cameras, and you're like, wait, up on the spire, like right now? Like,
well, yeah, like I'm standing up there with my selfie stick, and the cameras are all facing away from me. And all of a sudden, I hear this noise, and I look over, and it's turning and like zooming in on my face.
You're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah, and I'm probably like that guy. He sees that, and he's like, "Oh my god, it's like Mission Impossible in real life. Like it's a heist."
So that's kind of what must have been going through their heads.
Yeah.
Because then I get home, and on the evening news, and it's a Sunday evening. It's like the Grammys are on. It's like a very big TV event. And in the middle of the Grammy, they start running these ads, like coming up, like right after this, Daredevil caught live, like on top of a spire. And they made it like evening news for a week straight, where they kept showing my image, and they called me Bandana Man, because I had a bandana over my face, and they were like, "Who is Bandana Man?" And then they found like my YouTube and Instagram, and they were saying like, "Oh, look, here he is, like scaling another tower." And it was like Inside Edition did like an episode on, and I was like wanted, and they kept showing my image on the evening news after this.
Like, what?
And this was right after my surgery also. So I was just home chilling, like
watching yourself on the TV, like, Jesus.
So many friends called me up. They're like, "Have you seen the news today?" Like, so many people would send me, like, so many people sent me stuff to my phone. Like, what the heck is going on with you?
A news camera perched on top of a New York skyscraper to capture dramatic weather images captured something quite different, a daredevil. But who is he? Well, we may have solved the mystery.
It's stomach-churning video. 3 dudes perched on a steel platform on top of a Manhattan skyscraper. The video was captured by a WCBS weather camera positioned on the building. When one guy realizes the camera is recording, he quickly tries to mask his face. This is the building where it happened. It's a dizzying 54 stories tall in the heart of Manhattan. And now everyone wants to know, who's the man hiding his face behind the bandana? Well, Inside Edition did some sleuthing and found these videos by a daredevil who sure looks like the same guy from the tower. We don't know his real name, but he calls himself EM1T on his YouTube channel. Look, in all of the videos, he's wearing a bandana over his face. In this video, you can see him climbing a tower in Times Square. He puts a selfie stick in his mouth and scales to the very top, where he dangerously swings around a radio tower. This cameraman, who goes by the moniker Vic Invades, says he joined him for the stunt.
Who is Bandana Man, as we'll call him?
I can't really disclose that. We have a little pact. We keep things to ourselves.
Whoever he is, his daredevil days may be numbered. The NYPD says it's investigating.
So I prepared with a lawyer. I had a lawyer, everything set up. I kind of like clean my home a little bit, you know, hide the drugs, you know. I mean, the weed, not anything more serious, but
we like the pot.
Yeah. So, yeah, it happened. They came at 3-4 in the morning, like about a week after that.
How's that like? Like, you're sleeping.
I'm sleeping, and they're trying to knock down my door.
Like, do they like literally knock it down? Like, is it knocking to get your attention, or is it like they have the ram and they're
trying to knock it down? But I have a metal door with a very good lock, so even if they have a lock picker, you probably can't pick it. And then it's a metal door with a big deadbolt, so they couldn't. So eventually, they're like, "Hey, let us in. Open the door." So I'm so confused. It's the middle of the night, you know, and you don't expect to be woken up like this. I'm all naked on the other side of the front door being like, okay, I'm just going to get dressed. And they're like, no, you can't do that. Open now, immediately. Or you're like barricading yourself. And I'm like, no, I just want to put some pants on.
Like I don't want you to put me on the ground naked.
Yeah. So I did like throw some pants on. And then I told him, like, okay, look, I'm going to surrender myself. I'm coming out. You're not allowed to come in unless you have a search warrant, because I had spoken to the lawyer, you know, beforehand.
And you have to know your rights, because if not, they'll just abuse them.
So I'm like, okay, so we're both on the same page. I'm coming out. I'm surrendering myself. My hands are up. You know, I'll go with you, but you can't come in unless you have a search warrant. So I unlock the door, and the first thing that happened, they like shove it in on me. So I go flying backwards, and then they jump in and pin me down on the floor. And this is, my arm is in a sling. It's right after the surgery. Like, I can't move it yet. And they're putting my hands behind my back in handcuffs. God. And I'm screaming, telling them they can't do this. Like, my arm physically doesn't move that way yet. I'm like 6 months away from having my hand behind my back in physical therapy. But they're just like, what do you mean you can't go there? And they just force it up behind my back. So that's something I still can't do. I can't really like move my right arm behind my back. Like, they definitely made my recovery a lot harder, and they injured me at that point. And you know, they did some dirty stuff after that too. They booked me in 2 different boroughs. They booked me in Brooklyn and Manhattan. So now on my record, it looks like I was you know, arrested for criminal burglary, which is overcharging me. You know, felony burglary. And it looks like I was arrested twice in the same day, both in Brooklyn and Manhattan, with like a 6-hour window, because they took me one place first and they took me to the other place for the same charge.
And then it's just there. Like, you can't get rid of it. It's like on the record.
Yeah.
It's like.
And so what was there any other, I mean, obviously there's a lot of pain in the ass fallout from that. What was kind of like the next couple of days? Were you in jail for a few days? Like, what did that kind of?
Yeah, they brought me first to a Brooklyn jail and then to the Tombs downtown. Actually, here the Tombs got shut down now. That jail that's on Center Street, it's like 100 Center Street. It's right next to like Manhattan Bridge. You know, that's where Harvey Weinstein. I mean, what's his name? The other one, the guy that didn't kill himself. Oh, Epstein.
Oh, Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, that's the jail where he didn't kill himself. And that's where El Chapo was housed. You know, it's a very notorious jail, but it's a very bad place. You know, there is rats. You're in the basements a lot. It's just very... I mean, you feel awful in jail. It's never going to be a good experience. At that time, I got out after about 24 hours because my lawyer, thankfully, because he was in the court, like just waiting for my case to be brought up in front of the judge. And when it was, he started arguing, no, you know, this is not felony burglary. You're overcharging him. He needs to be released on bail. And so thanks to him, and it was like 1 a.m. by the time I was in the courtroom, and I was so grateful that he was there, because they're speaking in terms where you don't know what to say otherwise, and you're so broken down mentally from what you've been through that they make it very hard, and they try to offer you, you know, plea deals, just say that you did this and that, and then you can go. But I know I hadn't done any burglary, because in that particular building, there wasn't a single locked door that I had to open. And I just went to the stairway and to the roof. Like, I was never in a room, you know, there was never anything taken or missing. There's nothing like that. So, but they argue the burglary is just going somewhere you're not supposed to be, which, you know.
My definition of a burglar is like you stole something.
Yeah, like trespassing is going somewhere you're not supposed to be. And they charged me with criminal trespassing too, but then felony burglary. But that's just to overcharge you and intimidate you, you know. And yeah, it's the same thing they did to Drift. They charge them with felony burglary all over the place, and you know, you can end up doing a lot of time for that.
Have you had any other jail run-ins where, like, maybe in a foreign country or not in New York, where you've had to also stay for a day or two or maybe longer?
I've only gotten arrested in New York, actually. I've never been arrested in another country. I've had incidents with police in other countries, like France and Mexico. But I think as a foreigner, it's much easier to play a certain con game and convince them that you're just a stupid tourist that thought this was okay. And you're very, very sorry now and you're leaving tomorrow. So there's no risk of you reoffending. Like, I think it's easier to play your cards as a foreigner. But yeah, the only place I've actually been in a cell is here in New York. But I wish you were asking Raskol that question, because he's been in jail on every continent. You know, he could talk an hour about different jail.
Yeah, I feel like when we were hosting Space a couple weeks ago, we touched on that, and his mentality is just different. Like, he is able to like compartmentalize that part of the process, if you want to call it that, and just be like, yeah, like, I dealt with it. Like,
yeah, he's not the anxious type like me. You know, he says his superpower is that he can always feel okay, like, regardless where he is. He can be in the Antarctic, you know, in like an igloo, or he can be, you know, in Africa, like
middle
in
of the desert.
Yeah, he has that superhuman ability to not quite seem to know what his comfort zone is. And it's very rare to find people like that. And it's, you know, it can be very inspiring to be around them, because they inspire me to be more fearless myself.
Is it ever, do you ever feel like too much pressure to be fearless when around him? Because
no, I don't see it that way anymore.
At first, maybe, did you?
Maybe a little bit at first. Like, I just wanted to impress him and show that I could keep up with him. But then it became clear immediately that I can't keep up with him. Like, he climbs so fast and he just does it like it's nothing. And I need to do it my style and be more careful. 3 points of contact, you know. But I think we discovered that we both have very different skills. You know, I have skill sets that he doesn't possess. And especially here in New York, I know a lot, you know, and then he has other skill sets that are his stronger sides. And I think as a team, we're able to do anything between the two of us, but we all have different kind of areas of expertise, like within climbing and exploring.
Yeah, that makes sense. Did you or have you adjusted kind of anything about the way you go about exploring to try to have less run-ins with the police? Or is there anything that you like can do there, really? Or is it just kind of hoping that you stay under the radar? And
well, there's so many levels you can answer that question. Like, first of all, just posting online is one thing. Like, you don't want to do things and then post them the same night.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when I do something that's a really big deal, like Bank of America Tower over here, I waited 3 or 4 years before I showed an image publicly of that. So by the time I show them, even if they're like, oh, you know, let's investigate this guy, they're never going to find what date and time I did it, because to charge me with a crime,
footage is gone.
Yeah, they need to have a date and a time for a crime. Like, you can't just say this guy did it sometime in 2017. Like, they need to know the date. So the longer you wait, the safer. So that's first thing. Just showing things, you need to be a little bit careful. And that's why a lot of explorers they're always holding on to their grails, their gems up their sleeve, you know, because definitely. But also, one big thing is not to carry like burglar tools on you, because if you get caught, just even in this stairway right here where we are, if I get caught and I have a crowbar on me, that is a burglar tool, and then I can be charged with felony burglary, like.
Even if they didn't prove that you used it, you just had it on you.
Yeah, just having it on you while trespassing would qualify it as a burglar tool. So, you know, you try to be very smart with this stuff. You try... And in general, I take a very big step away from doing damage or property damage. You know, there are certain explorers that will use bolt cutters and crowbars and stuff, and I'm very against it. You know, I think you need to do things in a way where you don't leave any trace and you act like a professional. You know, if like you need to learn to pick locks to do this at the highest level. And yeah, so that's part of not getting in trouble with the police, because if I don't leave any trace and I'm careful with what I post online, even if they see a photo and they know that I've been somewhere, it might be hard for them to prosecute that or prove anything else besides like a misdemeanor trespassing.
I think that's fascinating. I feel like I'm always towing the line of like, what should I ask? Like, make sure I don't ask anything too specific, but I love getting into the details there.
So I guess one thing there that popped up in my head is how, rough number, how many different like climbs do you have kind of like in the back of your head of like, man, this is a crazy photo that I have and I can't wait to show it, but I'm going to wait like 3 more years until I release it?
I don't know number anymore. I mean, I can think of certain spots in New York like that I've never shown. And then I might have 10 different photos from that same spot. Yeah, but I think in general I am showing more and more now, because that's always the balance between wanting to be a good artist and show your best work versus being this cryptic underground explorer. And that's a big split in the exploring community right now, because you have about half of the explorers going the underground obscure way, where it's like, no, we're not going to even have social media accounts. We're not going to post on social media. And like, we're never going to show anything, and we're just going to have this like very secret society, about exploring. And then there's the opposite side, where obviously like people like Drift and Ruskolov is kind of leading the charge, where they're like, no, we want to be recognized as good explorers that create good work, and we want recognition for our work. And not only do we want recognition, we want to actually do this professionally and create a good life for ourselves. And a lot of people look down on that, within exploring. They say that's not like the pure old school exploring, like you do it for yourself. And some people are like, you shouldn't even bring a camera, you shouldn't even take photos, you should just do it for the sake of doing it. And that's like the pure artist, so there are these conflicting camps within exploring.
Did you ever watch the Netflix movie The Alpinist?
No.
It's a documentary about a climber who does like mountains, and he does a lot of ice climbing.
Yeah.
And it's it came out like a couple of years after Free Solo. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a very sad movie. You can imagine why, but his whole thing was he was really like, he was never documenting his climbs and all of that. And so kind of the whole documentary itself is this group of people who found him. He's just like this guy in Canada, and they were like, can we please film you and like make a documentary about this? And there's multiple times through it where he like ghosts them for months at a time, because he's like, you're getting in the way of me doing what I care about. And he didn't care at all about anything other than just like his own personal experience climbing. It was really interesting. Yeah,
and that's such a good parallel, because that's exactly what a lot of explorers are like. They want to have that, that just that idea of being pure at what you do. And it goes to all different hobbies, I guess. But
are there a lot of explorers who, like, you went to art school, you have a passion for creating art that isn't photography around exploration? Are there a lot of other explorers who have that artistic background, or do you feel like it's more, diverse in that sense, where there's not a lot of artists coming to it, but more just like people who need that outlet?
I think mostly it's the latter, people that need that outlet. I think it has gotten more popular in later years also. And people see it as this kind of cool, like dangerous bad boy thing to do. And there definitely is so many explorers in New York, that I recognize like that, where it's very young kids and they're just kind of doing it because their friends are doing it. And if their friends were skateboarding, that they would be wearing the skate clothes and they would be out skateboarding. It's more like a social event for them, and they would never go do it by themselves. Okay. But then we also have the opposite, where there are people that really just explore by themselves all the time and really do it for their own reasons. And yeah, I've learned that I can just do it for my own reasons, and I've stopped caring. Like, I care less and less about public perception of me or what the scene approves or not. You get very weird inner politics sometimes about what you can show and what you can do. And I've been there myself, policing others, saying, no, you can't use a bolt cutter. No, you can't use a crowbar, And I think morally I'm right, and I know. But at the end of the day, we're all people doing illegal things, and we can't police each other. And apparently, unfortunately, everything goes through cycles. A place will be untouched, and you figure out how to do it, and you'll have a lot of respect in how you act. But then over time, word gets around that this place is doable. People that don't have the right skills, they might break doors and break locks. And then all of a sudden, everyone is going, because all of a sudden it requires no skill. And then the building gets fed up, and then they put in a new door or a new camera, and then the place gets shut down for a while. And then it's dead for a while, and then slowly someone who is exploring for themselves will figure out how to crack the place again. And then it always goes in those cycles where buildings get oversaturated with explorers, and then they become impossible for a while, and until someone finds another loophole.
That reminds me of like balancing video games almost. It's like a super different thing to compare it to, but it's like, in a video game, when something is like, when someone's figuring out like, oh, this strategy is really good, it takes like a few people who are really good at the game and like really understand it in order to crack what the right strategy is. And then all of a sudden there's like a post on Reddit and there's a YouTube video and everyone is trying to like recreate the same thing. And then eventually the game updates and, gets a new balance patch, and then someone else has to go and figure out what the new strategy is.
Yeah. It's like that old Mario game for Nintendo where you could play the whole game, but then you could also just like go backwards in the beginning on the first level and just finish the game in the first minute in this weird way.
Yeah, like the cheat.
Yeah. So once the cheat codes or gets out there, then it loses the meaning what it used to be to like complete it from start to finish without like any preconceptions.
And I guess thinking more about like the New York scene and all of that, and part of my total ignorance on all of this, how much of overlap is there in like the like graffiti and like tagging stuff and just like exploring in general? Are there people who are like not only exploring but also like tagging and all of that, or is that like super frowned upon?
So there is a lot of overlap with the subway people. Some people, everyone has their own areas of expertise, and some people love the subway and they love to go down underground in the tunnels and the trains. And often there's a lot of graffiti that gets mixed into that. You're down in the trains, you might know how to get to the yards where the trains are parked. But on rooftops, there shouldn't be any graffiti because... like that's another thing that I've taken a very firm stance against in the past, because there have been people that tag rooftops. They want to leave their mark. And like, it's one thing if you do graffiti on a regular building, and I used to do graffiti when I was very young in Sweden, so I understand the attraction. But if I go to a 100-floor building, what's the point of doing graffiti up there? Like, no one is going to see it from the street level, and the only people that are going to see it are people that work in the building, and then it's going to be a very short sign that someone that isn't supposed to be there was up there, and then they're going to shut it down. So I think it's a very stupid thing to do on nice tall rooftops, but I totally understand the attraction to doing it in the subway or on the street level.
I feel like just listening to you talk about the whole process just like reaffirms why I'm a collector and like why I like talking to you so much. I feel like you have a very good personality, like a steward of urban exploring, in the sense that like your ethics and morals that you put out, I find myself agreeing with it, if not everything, like 99%. And it's like, that's the type of conversation I think people need to hear, who might look at On the Roofs and be like, I need to do that. I'm a daredevil. And then they need to hear this much more like reserved, calculated, and process. Like the process is so much more than just like, oh, I decided I'm going to go up there and like be a daredevil. I love, that was one of the first things that like drew me to our conversations in spaces, was just like, oh wow, he's always talking from the angle of like being responsible and doing this in a way that doesn't impact the environment that you're, climbing.
I mean, and thank you so much for saying
like
that.
I really appreciate that take.
No, I love hearing that because, for me, it's very important to consider how this can be done sustainably, because I've seen how it gets in New York is such a hub for explorers that we have too many explorers here and we have too many buildings.
6+ million people who live here.
So I am very concerned about it being sustainable, that we can keep doing this for years to come, because, people can do things to ruin everything for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it comes down to it, a lot here in America is an illusion of security. Like locks really aren't that hard to open, and security in buildings, even if they have a staff of 20 different people with hundreds of cameras, they really have an illusion of security often, and we figure out like how to hack these systems, but if someone is doing things in a very reckless, selfish way, where they're breaking things or they're causing the wrong attention, it just, we're not going to be able to keep doing this then, So I think it's very important to have a certain level of respect for these buildings, like to only take pictures and leave footprints. Like that's the motto that you should stick to. You should only leave footprints and take pictures. And my goal is that if someone that owns the building or works in the building that somehow is professionally connected to the building, if they see my photos, I want them to get happy. I want them to like it. I want them to say, oh my God, that's beautiful. I had no idea, it could look like that. And I don't want them to hear that anything went wrong if they ask their staff. I don't want them to hear, oh yeah, there's these marks up by the door, or someone broke the sensor, I want them to appreciate what I do and understand that I go out of my way to do it in a way that's sustainable, not just for my own sake so I can come back again, but also for everyone else's sake, so we can have some type of balance. Because you see it all the time, like people doing certain wrong moves that really trigger the wrong reaction, where it feels disrespectful to the building or to the staff. Like in London, for example, there was a big trend on YouTube where kind of like getting chased was like, it got a lot of views.
Getting chased by the police.
Yeah, and building staff. Like, let's say they could have done the roof and left discreetly. Mm-hmm. Instead, on the way out, they're going to be filming in the lobby and be like, I just did this. I just smacked your roof, or curse at the lobby guy and have him get worked up and run out on the street after them and laugh at him and film and run away. And sure, it gets more views because it's like this crazy scene, right?
Yeah. But it's not the right views.
But exploring is like so much harder in that city now because people started doing this type of behavior. It's not respectful. Like at the end of the day, I'm a guest in these places, and I need to act like a guest who wants to be invited again.
I think that's incredibly important. That was like one of the reasons I was so excited to talk to you, because I feel like that. So let me preface this by saying, like, I don't have a ton of experience in the urban exploration space. To me, I don't even know, like, what is the background of urban exploring before On the Roofs? Because for me, it starts, I'm 18, 17, and I see that Shanghai Tower video. And I'm just like, oh, what? Like, this is a thing? Like, before that, what was, like, do you know the background or the story behind urban exploring?
Yeah. I mean, there's always been explorers, right? And if you look at that old famous photo of the construction workers sitting on that metal beam up by Central Park eating their lunches, like, sure, they're construction workers, but something in them is also a bit like an explorer. They can eat their lunch
anywhere
on a safe level. They're sitting on this metal beam lined up without harnesses. So that tells me, like, people have always done this. And then even like my lawyer back then, when this whole ordeal I told you about with the police, he told me that in the 80s he ran up on the Brooklyn Bridge in a Santa Claus outfit like for Christmas and just did that. Like, he doesn't consider himself an explorer, but the act of going on top of the bridge definitely is.
Definitely.
So there's always been people like that done it. and I would agree that like On the Roofs and Raskolov was the first to really start documenting it in a certain aesthetic, where they used GoPro cameras and they filmed and they put that footage with music, so it's almost like a music video.
It's almost like a movie.
Yeah, like I've never seen that done before. Them, you know, that's a new aesthetic, and also shooting with like full frame cameras and wide angle lenses up on these cranes. Definitely, they were the first to have this aesthetic, but there's always been people exploring, I think. And if you really want to go back in New York history, you know, it comes to mind like people like Steve Duncan is a very early person who explored tunnels a lot, and he has a YouTube documentary that is like 10 years old or something.
Nice.
Very early in New York exploring. And then Moses Gates is another one, you know, that's been exploring here since the 90s. And he was on the Chrysler Building like almost 10 years before me. He visited the Eagles on the Chrysler Building, you know, a decade ago probably. So there's definitely always people that did it before. But I guess like the whole angle of social media and NFTs now, you know, is like more rapidly exposing the general public to it, as where before it was just some fringe explorer that kind of did it by himself and might not even take pictures, you know.
I have a question that could just completely 180 the conversation off of urban exploring.
I feel like we're talking so much about
I know. That's what I'm thinking.
NFT podcast. We should talk about NFTs also.
So yeah, I mean, a lot of times we actually don't even talk about NFTs.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, like, what are your favorite hobbies aside from art and exploring?
Well, something that's very important to me is animals. I've always been an animal lover since I was very young, and I grew up with dogs and cats.
Do you have any pets now? Just a cat?
Yeah, I have 2 cats now. They're getting up there in age. One is 17 and a half. The other one is 14 and a half.
Oh, wow. That's old.
Yeah, so they're getting pretty old and tired.
You've had them
now.
Since your early 20s?
Yeah, since
they were babies.
You know, we've had a long journey together. Since before exploring, since before being sober, all that, you know, we've been through a lot, these cats, and I understand why people have emotional support animals, you know, because it does that for me. Like at the end of the night, it helps me so much to deal with this anxiety I mentioned, you know, to have an animal around. And so I feed stray cats every day. Like in Brooklyn where I live, I go out and there's a colony of about 10 cats, and I've had them all, like I've trapped all of them and then had them to the vet and had them fixed and get their vaccinations and put them back afterwards. And
so you're just out there every day. They know, like they're
so when I walk down the block where they live, it's a big junkyard with like cars that are just junk cars everywhere, and I can ring the bell on my city bike and they come running, or I can just whistle and they also, so I just whistle and like 10 cats come running like up to me, and I can touch them and pick them up, but no one else can, you know, because they're stray animals. And that's something that gives me a lot of joy. Like that's something I feel like if I do one thing right in my life is to care for these smaller creatures that need help. You know, and that's like the one thing I can be sure about, that I like did something to get good karma. Because I mentioned like I lived a life where I wasn't always a good person in the past when I had my problems, you know. So nowadays I enjoy being on the opposite side. I enjoy being like the kind of, I mean, reformed seems like the right word, but rehabilitated person, where I enjoy taking it easy, staying at home, just like taking care of my cats and cooking dinner and, you know, drawing or journaling, whatever it is. You know, I love music too. I mean, I think everyone does, but I listen to a lot of music. But then I enjoy that I know that I have that other side of me that goes out and does extraordinary things and have the capability of staying calm under pressure and then be in intense situations and face them in this way where life feels like a movie sometimes, when you're sneaking around and someone's looking for you and you're hearing their walkie-talkie and you're like climbing and hiding, and then it feels sometimes, it feels unreal sometimes.
I bet there's times where it's just like I don't know, the anxiety I think I would feel from just thinking about like the time they came at 3 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
or like things I've done. It would be so tough for me. Like I just respect that so much that you're able to compartmentalize that a bit.
When we're talking now, it makes me think of a specific situation where I was inside a construction site for sunset. So I climbed in the middle of the day. I was up on the roof, and all of a sudden I see police cars just swarming to the bottom of the site. Like all 4 sides of the building, there's just lights everywhere. They're shutting down the streets and stuff. So I understand they're coming in to look for me. So I run down halfway in the building. And the layout's very confusing still because it's under construction very much. They're constructing all the rooms. And I find like a big like trash bag. And I put it over me. And I sit on the floor like inside a trash bag next to like a pile of trash. And I hear the cops come on the floor. You know, I hear them talking. I hear their walkie-talkies. But then I hear them go on the next floor. And I stay in there for multiple hours. And then, you know, slowly I start to sneak out. But then there's security guards, like the police left eventually, but there's security guards now sitting in the stairway, like halfway up the building. So you need to take off your shoes and tippy-toe like so silently, and you're trying to not even breathe. And yeah, it feels like you're in some type of video game or movie sometimes. Jesus. It feels a bit...
I'm getting tense just thinking about it. Like, how hot did that trash bag get? Like, that had to be... Did you cut a hole, like a little...
It was like open at the bottom, and it was like in the fall, almost winter. So it was actually like I had jackets and stuff on, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, no, it does give you that sense sometimes that reality is a simulation, you know, when you do these crazy things. And sometimes the stuff we can get away with, you know, sometimes you wonder like, how did we even do this? And
you knew immediately as soon as the cops were around the building, like they're there for me. Like there's not like another possibility where like something went
Here
wrong
for the other guy.
Yeah, like there's none of that. It's like, oh fuck, like they're here for me. And then you have to just make that decision, like, all right.
Yeah, and basically I know if I turn myself over, they're not going to go any easier on me.
No.
Because I know that they would lie and say, you know, like they did at the front door. If you just
had
open the front door, you can come out. But yeah, they're not going to go easy on you just because you hand yourself in. So why make their job easy?
No, and you grow up being taught to like, at least I grew up being taught to like bend to authority in that sense where like, oh, if they come, just listen, they care. And it's like, they actually don't. And knowing your rights is so important. It's something that like, I don't think 99% of people know.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even think about it.
Yeah. Like when I was arrested in that time I told earlier, they kept driving me around in this black SUV asking me questions. And I know the law. So the only thing I told them ever was, sorry, I don't answer questions. I'm represented by my lawyer. And for hours, they drove me around in a black SUV. I was like, but just tell us this. Oh, but if you just give up your friend that you were with, then we're going to like go easy on you and let you go. And they try to get me to snitch on other people. They try to get me to incriminate myself. And it's illegal to ask me any question without my lawyer present after I inform them that I have a lawyer.
They still did.
Yeah. And they also searched my home illegally. You know, when they pushed into my home, they started looking through my closets and my drawers. And they're like, oh, look, here's the jacket he had on when he climbed the spire. And they went through my closet. It's an illegal search. But they're never going to get in trouble for that. I'm the only one that's going to get in trouble if I trust a police, you know.
That's tough. I feel like that's the part that would give me the most anxiety too about the whole thing.
But at the end of the day, they don't really care about exploring. No. They only care when their hand is forced. Because, Bloomberg building, Bloomberg has a lot of pull in this town, you know. Maybe he called someone up and said, get this guy. Also, the media started sensationalizing it, showing my image. So then they are kind of forced to take a stand and arrest me because, you know, they don't care so much about urban exploration, I think. There's a lot more serious crimes in society that...
I would hope so. I would hope they would care less about that.
I think if it's like government related... You know, if it's a bridge or if it's like there's some beautiful chimneys around New York, but they're on water processing plants. So going in there, then it's like a government infrastructure type of deal. And that type of thing is usually worse. Like I wouldn't go into the World Trade center, for example,
Yeah.
because I know if I get caught there, they're going to throw the book at me and make an example out
That's
of
like
me.
the worst place to do
Yeah.
it. If they're looking for a terrorism excuse, it's like that is the place to make the excuse for it.
And so now when you do these, do you have like somewhat of an exit plan as you're going up of like, okay, if I'm at the top and I see a bunch of police cars, here's what I'm going to do?
Always. Yeah. And there's different exit plans and excuse. Like, first of all, you want to consider your physical exit plans. How many different ways can I get out of this place? You always want to have multiple ways to leave. But then also different excuses, different parts of the building.
Mm-hmm.
If I get asked what I'm doing there in the lobby, it's going to be a different story than if I get asked in the middle of the building, what am I doing there? Versus if I get caught in the mech room right next to the roof door, it's going to be a third story. You know, I do believe in the power of manifestation,
Mm-hmm.
and that we like create reality to a degree as we perceive it. So I always try to think like, what am I doing here? Like, what is my story? Like, I don't want to be making it up on the spot. If you come into this room and you catch me here and I'm not supposed to be here, I don't want to be like, this thing, I want to know already subconsciously what my answer is.
Yeah.
What am I doing here? And I want it to be a good enough story that if I tell it, you might believe me. So, it's just every different situation. Sometimes it can even be like, on the side of the absurd, you know. Like recently I was in a building with Ruskell, a very, very fancy residential building, like a lot of celebrities live there. And going down, like, we knew there's a big chance the doorman is going to recognize, like, hey, you don't live here, who are you, where are you coming from, what are you doing? And since I don't actually know a person in the building, I can't say I came from this apartment or this person, because they can call and check and it doesn't match up. So the story then became, we matched with a girl on Tinder, and she like wanted to have a threesome, but we can't tell you who she is. No, we can't embarrass her like that.
Yeah.
Like, we can't give her identity away.
Oh my god!
No, like, we
That's
don't even really
genius.
know her. We don't remember her apartment number. It was just this app. Look,
Yeah, it was
we
a
matched
fling.
with this girl, and it was kind of awkward. Like, she wanted both of us involved, and you make it really weird for the police, where they don't really know what to think. And the last thing is gonna think that you were here to go on the
take a
roof.
picture.
Yeah. So sometimes you just need to build a story and kind of believe it yourself when
That's
you say
amazing.
Is that the most absurd one you have? Like, that one's pretty good. I don't think
Yeah.
you could give me 30 minutes in a room and I don't know if I come up with that.
On the way down, it works pretty good, because then you can say, like, well, I was here for a legitimate reason, but for, like, I want to be discreet in the identity of the person I was visiting. We matched on Frinder, you know.
It's on Hinge, then on Bumble.
That's really funny.
I would be the worst at that. Like, my face, I have the worst poker face. So, like, if I'm lying to you, you can just look in my eyes and look at my mouth and be like, dude, you're full of shit.
The lying is hard, like, and I still rubs, like, I'm not a good liar either, and the social conditioning just kind of like, you feel so awkward if you tell someone a lie and they call you on it. They're like, no, you're not supposed to be here, like, leave. And nothing bad happens for being rejected, right? You just walk back out and you say, let's try another place. But it feels so wrong, like, against your social conditioning, to, like, lie to someone and know that they can very easily see through your lie. I mean, I think the key. So one thing, for example, that stands out, one very bold strategy I've used before that always gets me into trouble, but it works as far as getting through the lobby, is that if someone stops you in the lobby in a very, very fancy place, if you act super entitled, like you're like, I live here and you should know that based on what I'm paying you every month. And then you walk off like with an attitude, like, can't believe this guy. Like, you don't recognize me. Like, yeah, I'm only here 1 month a year, really, but you should know me. Like,
Yeah. I pay $100,000 a year for this.
It works. They let you go because they're scared of offending you if you actually are that one foreigner that lives in the penthouse who's not there most of the year. But they will always, like, try to figure out exactly who you are the moment you leave. And by the time you come back down, they might corner you and be like, wait a minute, like this doesn't add up. Like that is one excuse at the lobby that works, but it like almost gets me into trouble every time. So I try not to use that one.
I feel like, man, I'm just sitting here like, what can I get myself into? I don't even know. How do you practice that?
Yeah,
Like,
I like. It's funny. I remember there was one. I don't know why this one particular thing sticks out to me. I remember in college, there was like a place where we would go to play pool, and there was one time we were there, and there were like people taking out the TV, and I was just like thinking to myself how that could 100% have not been people who were actually there to take out the TV, but they were just like people in jumpsuits unscrewing the TV from the wall and taking it out, and like no one was going to question them because it's like, they look like they should be here. I don't know. Like,
yeah,
who am I to say?
So if you look at that specific examples, then you start to see like, okay, if they have certain tools, I'm more likely to believe that they're working and they're supposed to do this. Or if they're dressed a certain way.
The vest.
If they have a name tag or they have a hard hat or whatever it is, like certain. So I always consider this. If I go to an office building, I want to dress nice, like I work there. I want to have a suit on. I don't want to wear shorts. You always consider how to blend in. Sometimes at a construction site, you might need to throw on like a high-vis vest, even a hard hat. Yeah, it's that hiding in plain sight that you really need to learn to master, because so much about exploring is just a game of luck. Like if I'm just lucky enough to walk through a certain lobby, I can get up to an amazing roof, but it's a very hard lobby. So you need to start being more of a chameleon in how you dress and how you talk and how you act. And especially if you go into office buildings where they have turnstiles in the bottom, then we actually do the research to see what's happening in the building. Maybe there's some event, maybe there's some job interview, maybe, co-working spaces, for example, is one of the best things to happen to exploring, because so many random people go up to co-working spaces that aren't in the building every day. So if you know exactly what floor it's on, I hand my ID over, they scan it, they say, okay, they give me a little pass, and I go through the turnstile. And sometimes you might even need to rent a co-working space. I've done that for buildings I really wanted to get into. I rented like office space or a conference room. Like I've had conference rooms with Drift where we rent an hour and we sit in the room, we're pretending like we're talking about something serious, but then at the end we just go up instead of down.
It's like I just imagine this glass conference room where people walk by and just have this very animated conversation with Drift, maybe drawing like a Venn diagram on a whiteboard, and just like hour later close the door, go to the stairs. Yeah, like the thicker you can paint the illusion, the better. Because I think that's what gets people in trouble, is when they don't really commit, when they're just kind of like, I'm going to go do this roof, but I'm still going to dress the same way I would dress every day. And if someone asks me what I'm doing, like I won't have a prepared answer. And I think you need to really commit to the illusion or not do it. When you mentioned wearing a suit, like, do you bring a change of clothes? I'm assuming, like, do you have a backpack? I guess, like, you climb in the suit? Yeah. Just climb in the suit? Yeah, I've climbed in the suit, definitely. Sometimes you might want to bring a change of shoes if you need to have, like, dress shoes in the lobby. Then it could be hard to climb with, so then you can have an extra pair. But I'm always very concerned about not having a bag, because it's something I learned stands out to people. If you have a backpack or if you have a big bag, they always notice it a little bit more. If you walk in empty-handed, it's so much better generally. And that's why for so long I've just been shooting iPhone. Like if you look at my Instagram, it's all like iPhone shots. Like I'm known as like the iPhone guy, because photographers will bring a big backpack with lenses and camera and a tripod, and all of a sudden the tripod might be on the outside of the bag, and it just doesn't look right. Yeah, it looks weird. You're wearing a suit. And then full. Yeah, and now that I do have a camera, I got a very sleek camera bag that looks more like a shoulder bag, office type bag. But it's interesting because there's been moments in my life where I recognize, like, because I explore, I look better now. Like I might get my hair cut more often, or I might
trim my nails more often or whatever it is, just so you look like a proper, good, decent member of society, you know.
Whatever it takes sometimes, like, whatever nudges you to take care of yourself. Like, I feel
like
that.
Just shaving sometimes can make the difference between appearing a certain way to someone or not. So yeah, it keeps me like in check more, I guess. The fact that I know, and you know, and it's very interesting. Like, lying seems like a bad word. It's a dirty word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one wants to be involved with a liar. But I see this more as like creating an illusion, you know?
It's like acting.
And if it is acting. And if my intention was to do something nefarious, then I would be a bad person. But if my intention is just to love the view from the rooftop and take some photos, then I feel like at the end of the day, you have to listen to what the universal laws are. Like, we have society laws, and they're different in every society. But there's universal laws. So like you feel, for example, that you have the right to smoke this plant, marijuana, whether society says it's legal or not legal, because you know, like, no, down in my core, the universal laws, like, I'm not doing anything bad. And that's how I feel when I'm exploring. So yeah, I don't even like to think of it as lying. I just think of more like acting or creating an illusion to get to do the thing I want, which is ultimately a benevolent, good thing, in my opinion. And therefore, I think it changes a lot if you truly believe in your heart that you have the right to do this, you know, versus if you always feel like you're on probation in the world and you're not allowed to be anywhere. You know, when someone turns a corner in a building and sees you, you're going to be more likely to look scared and run away. And nothing makes someone chase you as much as a person running away from them.
I got to catch up.
You have to learn to do the opposite, that when you run into someone, you walk right up to them and say hi to them and act like you were 100% expecting them to be there because you're not doing anything wrong.
Yeah, I'm a horrible actor. It all goes back to my poker face. Like, that's why I'm not a poker player at all, but like, I just can't. I would be the person who's like, yeah, so I was walking and, you know, I just took the wrong turn and 55 flights later, I'm here. Like, it'd be horrible.
I mean, if you're a foreigner in a foreign country, you might even be able to get away with that one. But here, they would call bullshit on it.
I mean, speaking of being a foreigner country, the recent Mexico trip.
Yeah.
I want to touch on, I feel like we can superimpose some of the climb over the talk, but like I want to talk about how it felt to climb a spire that had a watching deck where like people can see you do it. Like, I feel like that's a very unique scenario. A lot of times when I'm watching the videos, it's like you're solo. There's not people around. There's not like a deck.
Yeah, it's a very unusual experience for us also. Yeah, mostly when we climb a crane, it's, you know, on a Sunday morning for sunrise, and when they're not working in the site, it's empty, and we might be done at 7 a.m, you know, so society is not really started going yet on a Sunday morning, and also it's so high that they can't even really see us from the street once we get past a certain level. But yeah, that's completely different to climb in front of everyone, and we're not even sure what's going to happen. Like, what are the laws? You know, like, what happens to someone that does this? What are we going to get charged with? And, you know, Mexican jail intimidated us a lot. You know, it's like jail in Mexico City. Like, I just have the worst images.
Especially like the cartel running shit,
Yeah.
like people getting beheaded, like just crazy shit.
Yeah, and also being a target as a foreigner, standing out, like, well, you probably have like more money than we do because you come from a different country, you know, so, you know, who knows how it works in jail, how much you actually have to pay just to survive. But yeah, that was one of the rare times when I did see Raskolov hesitate. You know, it's not often that I've seen that, but we were going to climb first thing in the morning, and he was like, wait, no, I have to use the bathroom right now. And you know, when you get nervous and you get adrenaline, like, you feel like you have to use the bathroom all the time. Yeah. So we kept running to the bathroom, waiting for our time to do it. And there just wasn't a time where we could do it undetected. So in the end, we just, after going up there like 5 different times, we just decided, let's just do it the more people there are, the better, because then it will take them longer to discover it in the chaos, and it will take them security longer to reach us if it's full of people and it's crowded. So that's what we did. I mean, we just have to make a decision that we're doing this thing because we want to do it, and then we'll deal with the consequences later.
One of the crazy things about that climb too was the radiation you mentioned. I know we talked about like you climbed the spire, and I think Raskolov stayed down, and you were like putting yourself in harm's way dealing with the radiation from the spire, and Raskolov was like, I'm gonna hang back.
Yeah, and then that's also a lot of spires around New York, or just a lot of rooftops in general that will have receivers and transmitters. And
do you do anything to like test for radiation? Like, I'm really ignorant of even how like radiation works.
I thought about that before. I've never implemented it though, but I thought about having the meter before to see the levels and actually know, okay, how long can I stay here safely? That would be a great thing to do, and I've considered doing it in the past, but
because I don't think about that at all. Like when I see like a antenna or something giving off electromagnetic waves, like I don't even, because you don't see it. Like you don't see the radiation.
But it's different. Like if you're on a big, like the H&M Spire right across the street here, for example, at Times Square, it's an active broadcasting antenna. Like there's radio shows and TV shows and whatnot transmitting from there. So when you get up to it, it looks very different. There's big warning signs saying any work that needs to be done on the roof, the antenna needs to be shut off first because this is a RF, radio frequency active place. I've heard horror stories of people getting broadcasts in their skull. Like you're climbing an antenna and all of a sudden you hear like the evening news or the weather.
Oh my God. I didn't even know that was a thing.
No, it's never happened to me personally, but it's happened to Raskolov, it's happened to other people I met, and it's very bad. Like you're definitely like absorbing a lot of radio frequency then. Sorry, I had somewhere to go. I was going to answer your question but I forgot.
What was the adrenaline different climbing when the whole watch deck was there versus like, your typical Sunday morning crane climb?
Yeah, the Sunday morning crane climb is so chill. You're alone and it's sunrise and it's usually the only thing you hear is sirens. For some reason, the sound of sirens travel so much. So you always hear whatever siren is going on underneath you, but you usually keep an eye on it to make sure it's not coming towards you, and stopping underneath you, which has never happened on a crane, honestly. So I'm very grateful. But every time I climb a crane, there's sirens, and you always watch. Okay, they went past us. Okay, all fine. But yeah, like that whole observation deck in Mexico had a lot of static electricity. Anywhere you touched, even down on the observation deck, you got a static shock. So once you started climbing up the spire, it was actually getting hot. Like the temperature was increasing more and more towards the top, to the point where it was like scorching hot towards the top. And I wouldn't have been able to do the climb if I didn't have gloves on. Yeah. And even with the gloves, it feels, very uneasy because you can just grab pretty quickly somewhere and then you have to move. Like you have to keep moving. You can't just stay and rest somewhere.
It's like playing hot potato almost, right? Like you don't want to hold on to the hot potato when I get to the next rung.
It was hot, and I was worried that the electronics were going to glitch out, like the GoPro and stuff, the camera, that it was going to, because it can happen, and it does happen from time to time where you take photos and the photo just looks completely distorted from the radio frequencies. But it's one of those things where it's like, do I want to live a very long life and not take any risks, or do I want to live a slightly shorter life and take certain risks, and then I evaluate, okay, what's the RF danger here? And generally, if you're pretty quick, it's okay. It's worse to have long-term exposure, like low-level exposure. Like let's say you live one floor underneath spire
for 10 years.
Yeah, that's a lot worse than just climbing it quick
for 10 minutes.
Yeah. And also there's like supplements you can take, like amino acids that actually prevent like radiation damage and poisoning that you can just order on eBay, honestly. And
nice.
And it's the same stuff that a doctor would prescribe you if you got radiation poisoning. So we took I always have it with me. I took it before and after climbing, so I feel like that also puts me a little bit on the safer side.
This is all the stuff that people don't think of when they look at these pictures.
Yeah, you see like one of your guys' pieces or a drifter piece, and you're just like, oh, that's cool. Weird they did that, or cool they did that. And you don't think about all the
radiation,
calculus, and sneaking through a lobby and all that kind of stuff.
I feel like I'm just trying to. I can't imagine hearing like a radio wave in my ear while not listening to the radio. Like,
yeah, it never happened to me, but it sounds terrifying from the people that...
I wonder if it, like, I would almost maybe have like a replay attack in my mind where I would like think I heard it again or something crazy. Like, I don't... I know we haven't talked much about NFTs.
We're definitely, we're coming up close to the end of time, but...
all right, we have like 12 minutes left. Wow, that went fast. Do we want to talk about NFTs at all? Like, I mean, I feel like that's kind of what brought us together. Like, what
yeah, I guess since you joined NFTs, we kind of got to the point where you joined and then went backwards.
Yeah.
What has the last year been like for you, just kind of as you've been minting, selling work, and just being a part of the space?
It means so much, and it's sometimes hard to put into words. Because before NFTs, like I said, I've always been an artist. I always created my art, but I never had any monetary success from it. I've had like personal, spiritual success where I feel like, painting saved my life during this period because I was able to express myself creatively, but I still have to go to work every day, So little over a year ago, it was still like that. I'm working every day, whatever finances that I have in my life is from blue collar, like manual labor. Like I've gotten to the point now where I work for myself, and I'm work mostly in one and the same building where there's a lot of really luxury units, but I'm grinding there. Like I'm in these apartments, like painting 10 hours a day, and I've gotten really good at what I can do, but it's a grind, and sometimes as an artist, you really feel that suffering at the end of the day. Like I can do more than this. Like I have other talents, and like the dream has always been to be recognized in the world for my talents and be able to support myself that way. So little over a year ago, selling my first NFT and actually selling like a bunch on that opening night, getting like over 10 ETH in volume, if you look at before then, what's the most I ever made from art? It's like, okay, well, I painted this painting for like 2 months straight and sold it for $1,000, and I had to like, when I had the gallery show in France, I had to like fly over there and bring all my own artwork over there. So even if I sold a couple of pieces, like I was still at a loss total from the trip. So to all of a sudden, like, actually, like, I know it sounds so shallow when we talk about money and it's supposed to be about the art, but the money does mean something. Like, because it's like a very real symbol that someone believes in your art and appreciates what you do. And the interesting I find is that it's almost like a thought experiment, because I have actually yet to cash anything out. Like I've never converted like crypto into US dollars, which I should have done.
Yeah. I'm like, damn, dude, I wasn't preaching enough in the spaces last year.
Yeah, no, you learn a lot through these cycles. Now I know much better what to do next cycle. But a year ago, I was so brand new in this, and ETH was going up and up. That's all I saw from when I started. Everyone was saying, "Oh, it's going to 10K,"
Yep.
So times. Really, like, my experience of selling my work and making money. At the end of the day, I haven't used any of that money yet, but just knowing it's there and that I have this alternative, way to support myself, and, it's helped me raise the prices in my contracting work. Cause I know like, no, my time is valuable and I want to spend half of the week being an artist and exploring. And I want to go on these trips to other countries and explore. So I don't actually have as much time to sell my work cheap, doing manual labor. Like I need to charge more. and I need to really invest in myself as an artist, it really helps the confidence to continue doing what you do. Because sometimes, especially doing what we do, if you're over in Mexico and you're detained by police and you're thinking like, I'm either going to get fined or I'm going to go to jail, and I might have to rebook a plane ticket to go home. Maybe I'll miss the flight back home. If you're just like taking time off of work to do that, and you come back and you're financially hurting, it's much easier to start questioning yourself. Like, what am I really doing here? Like, I need to be a responsible adult. But being able to show, like my parents, for example, like I get something back from exploring. Like, look, I'm actually like doing something that could be considered successful, and I'm actually like having people appreciate it and recognize it. It means so much as an artist. Like, it's hard to put into words what that means to an artist, just to be able to continue to do what you were doing anyways. And if the money stops, like you'll still continue, you know. I'll always explore, even if all of this goes away, you know. And I know that because I've done it, you know, for so many years before there ever was a single cent from it, right? But it just changes the perception so much, where it's easier to feel like you are a professional that belong here, versus, you know, sometimes you get an imposter syndrome as an artist if you're just doing your art by yourself all the time, and no one is like appreciating it or highlighting it or putting it on a wall somewhere. So the recognition just makes all the difference for an artist's confidence. And that's what I want people to know, that like every time they buy something from an artist, they're not just buying that image, like they're buying that artist's, like they're lifting their spirit in so many ways, where they might create their best work now. Like buying someone's work might give them the boost to just continue, push on for another year, and in that next year they might create the best thing of their life and actually become a recognized, established, like successful artist. So it's just so important. And I feel like art, especially digital art or photography, was always undervalued before this era.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I definitely looked at photography as something like, oh, you scroll Instagram and you get this feed of like nice things, but I didn't have any perception of like the story behind the work. And I think through NFTs and getting to talk to the artists and learn more about the story behind the work, it has sold me a lot more on photography, because it's like, oh, it's not just like a shot, it's this whole story. Sometimes it's adventure photographer going out on a glacier in Antarctica. Sometimes it is, you know, Raskolov and you over Times Square making Christ the Redeemer. Sometimes it's someone climbing Christ the Redeemer, the statue itself. It's just like, I don't know. It's one of those things where in this space, I feel like it's so important.
And I feel like the NFT space value originality also. You know, there's a lot of talk about derivative this or that, but honestly, that's the truth of the whole art market or the fine art scene. There are original people that have original visions, and then there's a lot of people that just want to copy it. And I think that is something that's, like you said, is emphasized in the NFT space, that people care, like, what is your intention behind this? What's your story? Like, are you doing your own original, like, authentic artistic expression, or are you just like hopping on the latest wave?
And you can tell when you talk to artists. Like, I've talked to artists on Spaces and I've not said it to them, but I've just thought, like, in my head, like, I think you're full of shit. And I would never say that, but I can tell when people are authentically sharing like something they're really passionate about versus like, oh, I put this out there to try to get you know, more sales or more likes or something.
Yeah.
And there's definitely been times where like I've not bought art because I've gotten that vibe where like I've really liked the piece, and then I talk to the artist about it and I'm just like, there's a disconnect here. And it's kind of disappointing sometimes, because like you get this perception of something and then you talk to the artist about it. It's like, oh, that's not what I thought it was. But
it's also very interesting how a lot of us are starting over on Twitter, because some of us might have like
tons of Instagram followers. Yeah,
we might, like, some artists might have a lot on Instagram or YouTube or whatever it is. But on Twitter, I don't know if I'm just ignorant, but I feel like in the past there wasn't always that many artists on Twitter. It was more like a text-based. That's always how I perceive.
That's how I perceive
it. It was
too.
a text-based format. So if you're a visual artist, you should be posting on Instagram or something like that.
The only thing I really saw on Twitter for a while was just memes. It would be like the standard, take some text, superimpose it over the meme. But there's no like, for me, there was no art before NFTs. Like I just didn't care. And it wasn't until getting in NFTs and getting some money that I was like, whoa, like I can do things with this money that are really cool, and I can have a massive collection of art I love. And like that wasn't something I ever thought would be possible in my life before NFTs. So I agree with you, but I also wasn't searching for it. Like I'm sure there were artists grinding, sharing work on Twitter. They were just like quieter, or they didn't have the what's the word? Like they didn't have the, I hate using the money and financialization part of like NFTs, but they didn't have that incentive maybe to share. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's both like a blessing and a curse, because a year ago everyone was seeing green. So every artist was flocking to NFTs and Twitter. But then, we hit this bear market, and I think, especially if I look at explorers, like so many came over to Twitter in this mass migration when everyone was seeing green and crypto was just going up, up, up. But then bear market, like it really, filters out a lot of them, and you can tell, who actually cares to be here every day to express their art and who is kind of just on the latest trend.
Trying to get that next sale. No, I definitely feel like this bear market has been a time for me to go back and look at the 2021 class, if you will, of artists or projects that came in the space and be a little more curious and like go in depth on it. Like I think a lot of artists I missed that came in 2021 because I was so focused on like Xcopy, Coldie, Hackatal, whatever, and there was like new great people coming up, and I did well, but I still wasn't like spending the time I should have intently listening to what they were saying, and I was more just like vibe check the art, oh I don't love it, like next. And now it's like I can actually go back, talk to the artists and figure out more about their work. Like I feel like there's a class of super rare artists that have kind of blown up recently that I was well aware of when they were very small, and I just missed them completely because I was so caught up with flipping a PFP or hosting a space or whatnot that I didn't take the time to like sit down and look at it. And I feel like over the last month I've changed my habit a bit with that.
But flipping the PFP is so important also.
For me, it's massively important. For me,
because it enables you.
Flipping the PFP is how I bought the art. Like if I didn't sell the PFP, I couldn't buy the art. So it was this balance.
Yeah,
but
at first when I came to crypto Twitter, I didn't really understand, like, okay, so all these people say they're here for the art, but really where the volume is being like traded with these like shitty cartoon images that's clearly not about the art. And as a artist snob, you almost look down on that, right? But then you realize, like, no, these flipping these things, these altcoins with cartoons attached,
yes,
actually enables people to like support artists in a very profound way. So, I think you need to do both to ultimately like get the most out of it.
Yeah, definitely depends on the person too. Like there's definitely people who have cash flow outside of crypto who like don't need to fuck around flipping pictures. For me, I'm working a government IT job making enough money that I can put a couple $100 a week into crypto and gamble with it. It was like my only way out was a big, not one big win, but just a bunch of consistent wins. And it was one of those things where like I can't imagine. I'm very envious of let me say this. I'm very envious of any collector who doesn't need to rely on flipping PFPs or selling NFTs to buying art. Like the collectors who came in, like the Brevin Howards, who just have billions of dollars and they're like, I'm spending 10 million on ringers. Like massively envious of them because I would be fucking shit up, I think, in like the artist realm rather than like PFP and generative stuff. But I guess like I'm young. I gotta
give it 20 more years and you'll be the billionaire coming in.
I'll be broke. Collecting art.
Well, I used to be envious of people that flipped because you see like the flip bots and this person, got their 10 ETH
NFT whale
profit from holding for a month, like I used to be so envious, like this seems like the easiest money to get. And then I started to try to do it. and I realized all of a sudden, like how many hours it actually consumes and how stressful it is. Like I remember, like I think the most expensive like PFP thing related I bought was like a bean when they were like 3.
Oh man.
Oh man, my poor beans.
Yeah,
I didn't sell like any pre-reveal.
And I just had this feeling like if this thing plummets and I wake up tomorrow and it's like 1 ETH all of a sudden, then I'm never going to forgive myself because I know how hard I work for my money. Like this is not what I actually want to spend this amount on. I'm just doing it because I decided this quick flip,
Yeah.
And luckily I was able to flip it for 4 ETH the next day. So there was like a 1 ETH profit. And I was like, oh shit, like I should be doing this all the time, every day. Like, why didn't I buy 5 beans, like instead of just 1? But what I realized was how much mental energy it actually takes and how draining it is. Like I tried to watch a movie that night when I had the bean in my wallet. And I couldn't. Like every 5 minutes, I'm scrolling, updating the page, making sure
the ding-a-ling, sweep the beans. Fuck, like is my bean there?
It's actually so stressful. Yeah. And it's so hard to predict also that I'm not envious of people who flip anymore.
You start getting into it and you're like, all right, I'm looking at risk reward. I'm looking at what is the probability. I think this thing will go up versus like 1 ETH versus probability it goes down 1 ETH. Like how much am I willing to bet versus my total portfolio on this outcome? And it's a whole fucking thing. Like I blew myself up in 2018 not knowing it, then had to teach it to myself for the 2020 cycle. And it's something where like you just coming in the space, you're not going to get it. You're going to fuck it up. Like everyone fucks it up. And you get to know who you are really quickly. Like if you can't think because you own something that you're so tied to the price of it, like probably sell it. Yeah, probably not. But
we should.
I know we're 5 minutes over.
We should start to wrap up, but we have one question we like to ask everyone before we go, which is if you were to have an autobiography about yourself, what would you want the title to be?
Well, one thing that I always repeat as kind of my motto is that creativity is the ultimate antidote against existential despair. And that is really what I find true for myself, both with my painting or editing a video or shooting, that in the process of being creative, it alleviates my existential despair and it makes me more comfortable here as a person. So maybe that, but also it could be something like more related to the highs and the lows, it could be my higher nature or my lower self versus my higher self, as above or so below. I don't know.
Oscillations. Nice. Yeah, we share ours. Mine's a Lindy walk. I feel like that one, you know me well enough. It's probably self-explanatory.
I never heard this word before you used it. I had to Google it, because English is not my first language. And I was Lindy walk.
Wait, what the fuck's that?
I thought Lindy was a name, like Linda. But yeah, it apparently means like a relaxed, casual walk, right?
Yeah, with no aim. You're just walking around, vibing.
Yeah, mine changes depending on my mood, but currently it's fuck it, we ball.
Fuck it, we ball.
Fuck it, we ball.
Yeah, it's a nice, like, aggressive.
Yeah, well, it's funny because for me, really, what I think about with it is I'm very much an optimist, and like if something doesn't seem like it's gonna work out or something like that, my general mentality is like, fuck it, we're gonna do it, we'll figure it out, we'll build the plane as we're flying, we'll do it. That's kind of how I think about it.
I'm gonna adopt that a little bit and take it on more myself. I will try to tell myself that in buildings in the future.
Fuck it, we ball.
That feels like of all the times you could do it. It feels like
sometimes you're hesitant. There might be some new camera or something. You might have to sneak past someone. I'm gonna remember this. I'm gonna tell myself, fuck it, we ball, and we do it.
I love that.
I love it.
That's how we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
But is there any shout outs you want to give? Any upcoming things? This will probably air within month and a half of us recording it.
I want to take like a big time to shill my latest collection. No. No, nothing. I think everything that's worth mentioning we already touched on. Who I feel a kinship with in the exploring scene and kind of my motivations behind doing it. And yeah, no, I'm happy to just wrap it up without any final pitch of any kind.
Oh, that's good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to you and Raskolov together sometime too. I know he's in Mexico now, but is he in Mexico now? Last time?
Yeah, he just moved there. Yeah, it's his new homeland now.
Unfortunate timing on our part.
He'll be back here in a couple of weeks, I think, even. So
okay.
He'll be back around. And do you ever do like a portable setup of the recording?
So we're actually talking about that for Art Basel and figuring out what that looks like, because we're going to have a good setup in Art Basel where we have a bunch of friends around who would be great on the podcast, and it's figuring out, what does this table look like somewhere else, essentially. So,
because I know a lot of podcasters have some special device that they use for kind of portable podcasts that seems to work well for them. And it would just be so fun if at the end of this we could actually venture up to the roof here and kind of live podcast in the moment.
We'll let the
so that
audience...
could be next time.
Yeah,
that could be next time. But until next time, thank you again for coming and hanging out with us.
Thank you so much for having me.